Welcome to the Burnout Expert podcast. Today, we have a guest with us that was a lawyer for 27 years in the UK. And through that time, she burned out several times. 6 years ago, Philippa, sorry, I didn't even introduce you, Philippa Robinson. So 6 years ago, Philippa had a breakdown after she had major sight loss. And this is one I just did an interview with somebody else where they had lost sight in one eye. So this is something that I have heard, not very common, but it is one of the symptoms as well of burnout that I have heard throughout my years of working with burnout. And she realized that through this sight loss, she had to start making some changes and diving into the realities of what was going on. And she realized that some of her people pleasing came from childhood, from different traumas, from different things that she was doing. And she also discovered that she is an HSP, which is a highly sensitive person. Now, I haven't spoke a lot about this, actually. I did on my other podcast, but not on this one, where HSP, being an HSP, I am myself, as well as my son, and that did contribute to some of our burnout. And when somebody is an HSP, it does lead them easier into burnout. So this is something that I am so excited to be diving into here with Philippa today. So with Philippa, through her healing transformation, she stopped people pleasing. She prioritized her self-love. So we need to figure out how you stop people pleasing, because this is a big one, and discovering her identity as an HSP. In 2019, Philippa left her corporate job. She left being a lawyer in order to support women on a quest for self-discovery as a life coach. She also hosts two podcasts, Meeting of the Minds, which explores personal development, and HSP Connection, which changes the narrative through being highly sensitive. Philippa has also wrote a book called I See Me, which shares her childhood story and initial transformation. So I'm very, very excited. Philippa, welcome to the Burnout Expert podcast.
Hi, thanks very much for having me, Andy. It's a real pleasure to be here.
So where do we begin? I'll let you start, because there's so much here that I really want to be diving into that is so important. Let's start with your, like, the eyesight. I guess that is a huge one. Let's dive into that. So tell us, like, even months leading into that, or years, or whatever, wherever you want to start. Let's start from there.
Okay. Yeah, because it is hard to know where to start sometimes. So hopefully I can help this make sense. So January 2017, I realized that something was going on with my eye. I was incredibly short-sighted, have been all my life. I'm used to things not being quite right with my eyes, but I've never had anything particularly chronic happen with them. I'm just really, really, really short-sighted. And but it did come to light that what was happening was something entirely different. And the hospital initially didn't really know what had happened. They couldn't tell me what had happened, how they were going to treat it, whether they could stop it. And because it was kind of quite rare, you know, it might happen in the other eye, or what was it going to happen in the other eye? And really that started a massive unraveling for me. Yes, I was really scared. But what I also realized was that I had built my life, my self-worth around doing things for other people all the time, and being the go-to, being the helpful one, being the people pleaser, because that is how I'd learned to survive my childhood, really. And by this stage, I'm a 47-year-old woman, but I'm still carrying those scars of my childhood into my adulthood with me. For about 3 or 4 years before that, I had been very much aware that I was feeling much more angry. Anger is not something that I particularly identified with over the years. I got very angry with myself, but that didn't really count. I could really be very horrible to myself in my head, but I didn't really think that I was an angry sort of person. But so when I was aware that I was having these outbursts that were seemingly coming out of nowhere, and something really trivial that was happening, I just gosh, I'd just blow. And there were a couple of occasions where I vividly remember having a sort of out of body experience, as though I was standing next to myself, looking at me, having a row with my husband, and sort of looking at me thinking, whoa, where is all that coming from? And how can you be so vile? And even then, it didn't really register to me that something was going on here that was really quite big, and I needed to look at it. Even then, it didn't register.
Yeah. Can I ask as well? You mentioned it being with your husband. We do, from all my experience with clients and my own personal experience, it happens at home first with
Yes.
the spouse, with the kids, and then it can start creeping into work. Did it start creeping into work with you? Did it mainly stay at home?
It mainly stayed at home. At work, I felt, I suppose, at work, I felt a lot more well, I'm not sure in control is the right. I think I probably felt like I was more in control.
Yeah.
And the buck stopped with me. And if I did it, I did it. And if I didn't do it, I didn't do it. But I knew where I was, I suppose.
Yeah.
I like to think I was a great team player, but I'm not sure how great a team player I was, actually, if you know what I mean.
When you start looking back and you're
Yes.
like, okay, I thought I was really good, but maybe I was a little shorter and I needed to control things a little bit more at work as well.
Well, and what I did, I just did it all. If somebody else wasn't playing their part, I just did it, because for me, the most important thing was getting it done. Yes.
Yes. And I used to find as well that there was a difference. As soon as I walked out of my house, I could put that facade on. It's almost like I put that armor on. But when I walked in my house, it was almost like walking through my front door. I would almost feel like all my energy would come out of me, and I'd be like, whoosh, okay, I don't have to pretend anymore. I can totally just be this exhausted person that's just exhausted. And I could be that in my house, which I feel too, because I had those defenses down, maybe is why I was able, that sounds bad, I was able to yell at my husband more versus my clients. That sounds horrible. But why I did yell at him more, why I was shorter with my kids, is almost like in my house, I didn't have to pretend.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, everything I talk about now is, with 6 years on, with a lot of hindsight. I mean, at the time, it's really hard for me to imagine really what was going on at the time, because it was just all happening, you know, and I wasn't able to be conscious about it in any way. And for me, a lot of it came on the back of feeling broken. I mean, I felt broken for so long, all the way through my childhood, not good enough, broken, I needed to hide that at all costs, because if anybody knew the real me, they'd see how broken I really was. I literally thought that there was something not massively wrong with me, but all I could see was everybody doing life and doing it the way we should, bunny ears should. And I couldn't do that.
Yes.
I could put on a good show. The front of me looked like I was doing okay, but inside I'm like, I don't want to swear. Can we swear? No, totally. Inside I'm going, fuck. How do I do this? How do I keep up? I can't do all this. Inside I'm like, on the edge, really. And I just had this overwhelming feeling as I was getting towards 2017. And I had my kids late in life. I had a lot of serious, disastrous relationships, which doesn't come as a surprise given my childhood. So I didn't have my kids. I didn't meet my husband till mid-30s, and I had my kids 37 and 39. So by the time this was happening to me in 2017, this will come as no surprise to you, my kids were at the age that I was when my childhood started falling apart. So, and also, I was witnessing how I was parenting and how, on the whole, nice I was to my children, and realizing how not nice my parents were to me. So there was, and I was perimenopausal, and the burnout from the job, there was just so many things all piled in on me at once. And I am firmly of the view that is why I lost the sight in my eye, because I had absolutely refused to take notice of any other signs my body had been giving me up until that point.
So where did you link that though? So you were at the hospital, you're getting tests, find out with this eye, like, did you just say to yourself there, okay, I need to make some changes? Like, was that the pivotal thing?
Good God, no.
Yes.
No. If only it were that simple in a way. No, I went to the hospital, and I went to the hospital on my own because I went to the optician, and my optician, who is great, said, I think you need to go to the eye hospital. So I went to the hospital, and it's all within walking distance. So I walked to the hospital, went on my own, course I did, because I can cope, do it. And I wasn't expecting anything bad. And then when they said to me, you've got damage on your retina that is permanent, I like burst into tears, and then sort of gathered myself together and walked home, and just was like in a bit of a blur for a couple of days. Then I went back to work,
Of
course, and ended up really damaging my neck by still trying to see, even though I couldn't see. But I was out, when I was out and about, because I couldn't see properly out of my right eye, I'd lost my depth perception because my eyes hadn't caught up. And I'd sort of like fall off the edge of pavements because I couldn't quite, I tried to cross the road, but I couldn't quite judge the depth of the pavement. And I was like stumbling around and thinking, God, disaster thinking, how on earth am I going to cope? What happens if this doesn't get any better? And it was slowly over the next few days and probably a week that it slowly dawned on me that my life as I knew it could well be gone.
mm-hmm.
If I couldn't get the sight back, and in fact, if the worst happened and I lost, I'm not saying I wouldn't have built a new life, but my life as it was potentially gone.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to be able to do all the work on the computer and stuff, and I was already struggling with my eyesight as it was, so how I'd manage with one eye I wasn't sure. And I know plenty of people do, but my brain went to, you're not going to be able to do this. And then the next thing was, and who's going to want you? Who's going to want me? Who's going to want me around? What use am I as an employee? What use am I as a mother? What use am I at home if I can't carry on doing all the things that I have done all these years? And it was that realization eventually that made me understand two things, really: the enormity of what was happening, but also how I didn't know who I was if I wasn't people pleasing.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even know to call it people pleasing then. Who was I if I wasn't able to do all those things?
Right. So that was your identity. And
Absolutely.
Your identity was being ripped from you as you knew it.
Yep.
Like, yes, you push on, you go on, you figure stuff out. And if you did lose your sight, you would do that. But your identity of being able to do all of those things for people was gone.
Yeah.
Okay, that needs to sink in for people listening to this, because that's what we do. A lot of people that get into burnout is because we have this identity as well of always having to do all of these things for all of these people, for ourselves. And if we're being truthful about it, it's often we're also saying stuff to ourselves. For me, it was, I'm not good enough. I don't have a voice. Yeah. And it's different for each of us, but these things are imprinted in us that make us feel we need to do all of these things for other people.
Yeah.
So if this never happened with your eye, would you have stopped?
Good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know, because would I have stopped? I suspect not.
Right. Because the thing is, as you already said, you were already having that anger with your husband. You were already having this, like, needing to do everything and take over everything for people at work. Like, you were already doing these things without piecing all of that together. And it took you a couple of weeks after losing your eyesight to start saying, hold on, maybe I'm attributing to this.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, your whole identity was being stripped for you. And it took 2 weeks to figure out, hold on, maybe I'm contributing to this.
Yeah.
And that's
Uh,
why so many people get into burnout.
yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I need to do something here.
Okay. So what did you do?
Well, so after a particularly frustrating trip to the eye clinic where I thought I was going to get some answers and still didn't get any, I came home and I was just beside myself. And, you know, at this stage, my kids were 7 and 9.
Mm.
And I was really angry. I wasn't angry with any of them, but I could, you know, I could just feel it. It was just constantly bubbling away in me. I describe it as like a volcano, you know,
Yes.
just like, ooh, and then, you know, it erupts every now and again. And I said to my husband it's funny because people talk a lot about, you know, crying on the bathroom floor, don't they? And I wasn't on the bathroom floor, but I think I have a picture of me crying on the kids' bedroom floor, actually, and just saying to him, I have nothing, like, I am going to have to go to therapy. I'm going to have to find somebody to help me, because otherwise I am going to end up screwing our kids up. And after what I experienced, that's the last thing I want. And if I don't get help, I feel like I'm going to have to leave.
Wow. Okay. This is huge.
It makes me feel quite emotional just talking about it.
Okay. So for anybody listening to this, when Philippa said that, I know my first thought was, holy crap, this is a good mom, right? That's what I'm thinking. This is a good mom who is sitting there and thinking that I need to do this in order to do better for my kids. The thing is that the self-talk that we often have in our mind is, I'm selfish for taking on this stuff, or I'm so messed up, or I don't deserve this, or, you know, everybody else should come before me, or why am I so screwed up that I need this? That's what we say to ourselves. But when I'm listening to you say this, my heart swelled, because I'm sitting here thinking, crap, your kids are lucky that you made this choice. Because how many people, like people that are listening to this right now, they are in this burnout. They know that what they're doing with their kids is not right. I knew when I was yelling at my kids, this was wrong. I will say, though, that when I was yelling at my husband, I was in a state where I really did think that everything was his fault, which gets into that point with burnout. It really does.
Yeah.
But if you are at home yelling at everybody, then think about what Philippa just said. Like, think about it. She said, I need to start taking care of this to be a better mom, or I'm going to screw up my kids like my childhood was. Most of us, like our parents, are always doing the best that they can. Us as parents are doing the best that we can, but we are so going to screw up, even though we're doing better than our parents did. And if we don't start looking at ways of, okay, how can I protect my kids on my screw ups? Then things are just going to be repeated. So that is a huge moment that I think everybody listening needs to hear, because that is where it's not selfish. It's not wrong. You are not a bad person. You are not effed up. You know, you are doing the best thing that you can right now for your family and for your kids by actually diving into your crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you do after that cry on the floor?
Well, I phoned a therapist and left a message, and luckily she phoned me back. And I went to see her, and I then, so I naively thought, I have had little bits of counselling over the past, little bits to sort of get me through a little blip, but not anything serious, and certainly not looked at anything particularly deep, because I was in blissful ignorance, really. I used to say, oh, my childhood was pretty crappy, but you know, I'm here now, and it's fine. You know, that's behind me.
I'm strong. Push through.
Well, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. I mean, I suppose I never really thought of myself as particularly strong, but I realize now I am. Yes. But I was so busy trying to keep my mask on and hope nobody saw the truth that I didn't really have any mental space for anything other than that, really. But completely, sorry, menopause brain, completely forgot where I was going with therapy.
That. So how was therapy?
Yeah, and she managed to persuade me to commit to staying for 6 weeks, because I naively thought at that stage that's perhaps all it would take.
Mhm.
And then then I stayed for 6 months, then I ended up staying for 3 years in the end. But she said to me at the very first session, and I was telling her all about what had happened with my eye, she said to me, I wonder what it is you don't want to see.
Mm.
And slowly we looked at all those things that I didn't want to see. We looked at my dad leaving when I was 6, my mum remarrying really quickly, me not feeling safe, as though I had a proper place in my house with my stepmom and my stepfather and my the brothers from that marriage. My mum was an alcoholic, so I came home to chaos every single day and never knew what I was stepping into. All of those, my stepfather was okay, but pretty useless, really. He did nothing he wasn't awful. He was as emotionally absent as everybody else had been. And so I had to look at all those things and feel the pain that I had not allowed myself to feel all those years, and feel those feelings, and know that it was okay to feel let down, angry, hurt, sad, all of those things. And actually it makes complete sense that I feel like that, because what I experienced was not good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody had ever said that to me before. Yeah. And at 47, I really understood, what it means to talk about your inner child. I really felt that inner part of me and all the hurt that she had felt. And it kind of brought us back together again, if that's not too woo to talk about that. I feel like I'd been very separate all those years. I do think now, knowing I'm highly sensitive, which we'll get to in a minute, I think being highly sensitive heightened that experience of that trauma. I mean, high sensitivity is an innate trait, you're born with it. So the trauma did not make me highly sensitive, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there about high sensitivity. But when you are processing things, when you're processing your sensory stimuli at such a deep level, you are going to take in that trauma and process it and digest it at a deeper level.
Yes.
So, and that doesn't make me weak. It doesn't make me, I shouldn't just get over it. It's a real thing. It's what I experienced, and I needed to heal from it.
Absolutely. So there's so much you just said as well. There's one, I believe, because this is being recorded in advance, I do have an episode that I did solo on parts therapy, where we talk to the different things. So anybody who, if you missed the episode that I do have, it's a couple episodes ago. I know it was after Vincent Van Ohm's interview. If you go into that one, that does dive into the childhood thing. And that has been astronomical for me as well. I know when we're diving into, which I went into in that episode. So if you're wondering like how the childhood can actually affect you still as an adult, go and listen to that episode for sure. But parts therapy is huge. We do have these pieces as a child that we still do carry with us, and ourself as of now knows these things.
Yep.
Still, that child is still living in that trauma. And until we deal with that, it's still going to be living inside of us, all of these different pieces.
That part was very much running the show still. That hurt, angry little girl was still running the show. And she's not anymore, because I am. The adult me is.
Yeah. And that was me too. I felt like if somebody yelled at me, my voice stopped.
Absolutely. And here we are, and we both have podcasts. That's interesting, isn't it? So we build platforms to allow our voice. Well,
it's been fascinating because this podcast is very different than my other podcast. My other podcast was teaching, and it was safe. This one, I'm diving into things that I know not everybody, like parts therapy, people don't always air into that. Like I'm saying stuff more in this one because I've worked through it. Like you'll hear the difference too in both of my podcasts. versus me getting that out there and having that voice. My social media, you'll see a difference in it. Like it's fascinating because I didn't feel like I had a voice because I was worried if anybody said anything bad or angry, which did happen to me, I shut off because I didn't feel I had a voice. Yeah. So it's just fascinating diving into all of this. So let's talk about this HSP piece. So
Okay.
15 to 20% of people are HSP.
Yeah.
And
then they're now saying it's more like 20 to 30, actually.
oh,
It's
really?
more than they think. Yes.
Interesting. And I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
And
me neither.
I believe it's a 50-50 split, men and women.
Yep.
And most of them that are HSP as well go into jobs of service.
Yes, we do. We can do any job.
We can.
So we can do any job, but it needs to be the right environment that we're working in. So it's not necessarily the job, it's more the environment that we're working in as much as anything else.
Yes, but you will find as well, like I have a background with working with first responders.
Yes.
And I'm talking to many of them, and I'm like, oh, you're HSP, right? As I'm speaking, but I didn't have a voice in that time. And I didn't say anything. So I'm like, they're not going to believe me. But the ones that I actually did, and I got them to read like Your Highly Sensitive Child.
Yes.
That book. I like the child one, not the adult one, because that's usually where we have the memories mostly of our child as being sensitive. They're like, oh, this hits home, right? Yes. So it is quite fascinating. So please tell us, what is being highly sensitive?
Okay. And just before, while we're still on the stats, about 80% of HSPs are introvert or more introvert than extrovert. I'm sort of in the middle. I'm a bit of an ambivert. 20% are extroverts. So there is a lot of thought that if you're an extrovert, you can't be HSP. That's rubbish.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, you know, yeah. So HSPs and introverts are not necessarily the people who we always used to think they were, which is like people sitting in the corner and not wanting to engage and being very shy and quiet. All that thinking around those subjects has exploded now into something very different, which is great. So high sensitivity is and highly sensitive person are the same thing. Elaine Aron did back in the 90s did a study. I can't remember what the study was exactly for, but out of that study she came across this group of people who were displaying some characteristics that she found very interesting. Did you want to say something then?
Yeah, Elaine Aron is who wrote that book, Highly Sensitive. Yes. Just so people know who we're speaking of as well. Yes. That's
right. And she also then went on the back of this study to write The Highly Sensitive Person. So she coined the phrase the highly sensitive person. And what she realized is these people have something, so I do, you do, called sensory processing sensitivity. It's not a disorder. There is a sensory processing disorder, which is something very different. It's sensory processing sensitivity. And what that really basically means is that out in the world, we are all experiencing stimuli, you know, sight, sound, taste, touch, you know, everything. But we as highly sensitive people are more sensitive to that stimuli. So we are processing it in a different way. So our brains are wired in a slightly different way, and we are processing it usually much deeper and experiencing it in a slightly different way than other people are. And the way, and I only realized I was an HSP as I finished therapy. I was like, okay, so who am I now? Who am I now? I'm not weighed down by all this childhood trauma. And part of what I discovered about who I am is that I'm a highly sensitive. And I was listening to people talk about it, and they were saying things like, do you startle easily? Well, I do all the time, you know. Say boo to me from behind and I'll jump a mile. You know, do you startle easily? Do you find some smells either really gorgeous and amazing, or oh, absolutely, you know, knock you sick? So the smell of diesel absolutely makes me want to throw up.
And fabric and stuff.
Fabrics is a really big thing. Can you only wear certain fabrics? Do you like them to be soft and cozy and comfy? Do you have to take the labels out the back of your clothes sometimes because the label is really scratchy? You know, tastes. I mean, I think super tasters are something different and have maybe enlarged taste buds, but you know, tastes. Do you, you know, do you really sort of like luxuriate in tasting something wonderful? Art, do you feel really moved by a painting? And I don't mean just look at it and you go, oh, that's nice, but like just it stirs something inside of you. Music does it for me. You
Yeah.
know, it feels like I can feel the music in my body, and it just, yeah, it really moves me.
Mhm.
So those are some of the signs. There's a lot more to it than that, but those are the external, the signs that you might appreciate and recognize from external stimuli.
Yeah, and you don't have to have them all.
Oh gosh, no, you are
So,
all, well,
through me
yeah.
with art, I have no appreciation for art. I'm really like horrible on that one. That I was just asked to go help be the parent on the school trip for our art gallery. And I'm like, oh, I'll do it if you need.
Yeah,
It's
but I'd
like,
rather do something else.
right? Yeah, I'd rather be at the science center.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just, it doesn't mean you have to have all of them. Like with my kids as well, one is very, very heightened to lights.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and
Especially strip lights, they are really bad,
yes,
but yes, sensitivity to light is absolutely one of the key ones.
yeah, my other son and I are both huge to smells. Um,
Yes.
also so when they were babies as well, like when my oldest was born, people would always want to come up to him and he'd be just like, whoa, like that's just
Yeah.
too much for me, too fast.
Yes.
All the noise and the stimulation and people around and the smells of them, and he'd freak out. And it's not that he's shy at all. He just needed that time to like get used to the environment.
Exactly. So it's overstimulation, isn't it?
It is.
And scary movies is another, you
Oh
know,
yes. My son will not watch Disney movies.
yeah. Oh,
Don't watch any movies at all. Yeah, it's the music, I don't know what it is, but it's freaked. He's now almost 12 and he's now just starting to be able to
yeah.
watch movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, not
so that the ones that you like, you know, that hold you in suspense and you know something's coming and you know it's going to be awful. I mean, I can't take it.
well,
And I can't take the violence either.
yeah, he wasn't even those. We're talking like just
Yes, just
like
base. Yeah.
planes, cars, like those.
And I think that is actually much more, I wouldn't say it's really common, but it's not as unusual as we would think it is. But I think what happens is a lot of parents will sort of push their kids to watch it. Oh, look, it's just watch it. And your child is actually having a completely hideous time by being made to watch a movie they don't want to watch.
Yeah. So how I relate this as well is kind of like a drug dog or a bomb dog, where they can go and they can sniff out this drug. They can sniff out the bombs where we can't.
Yes.
Like we don't know that a bomb is there. We can't smell it, but they can. They know it's there. And we don't question that this dog knows it. So for us, like with scents and different things as well, I know scents have synthetic fragrances all have hormone disruptors in them. And our bodies just instantly know, ooh, this is actually a chemical that's bad for me, that we're actually just more sensitive to things that are like a bomb sniffing dog. Like those hormone disruptors are bad for us. It's just that most people don't feel them or experience them. So they're like, yeah, it's fine. But
Yes.
then we get all these health issues and stuff coming up, or environmental concerns because of them, but people can't feel them like that dog. They're not as sensitive to them.
And you make such a brilliant point there, because highly sensitive people, you know, a friend of mine will say that we're like the canaries in the coal mine.
Yes.
That, you know, whatever we are experiencing, we're experiencing it first.
Yes.
And it's not that, you know, so we will, and it's really interesting when you know, because your podcast is about burnout. So in systems and structures that are clearly not working, the highly sensitive people will be feeling that first.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of dismissing them as, oh, they're just a bit sensitive and they should just be able to get on with it. You know, if we lived in a world when like, oh, whoa, okay, maybe there's something, you know, there's something going on here. We need to look at what is happening. Thank you, highly sensitive people, for letting us know this. We need to look at this so everybody else doesn't get sick.
Yeah. And so what goes along with this highly sensitive as well is that empath part too, where we also
Yes.
feel these emotions more. And so when we go into this job of service and we feel people's emotions more, which is also why we're affected more as a child. So I was having this conversation with my brother where like he wasn't as affected by the anger of my father, or the way that my father spoke with us growing up, he wasn't as affected of it as me. He's like, oh, it's just the way it is. But I am highly sensitive and empathic, that I felt it. I felt it deep in. You feel when people say something. So you can be in this conversation. So I said that that's him. Then we look at his kids. He have one that is deeply emotional. But the thing is with all of us, so myself, my niece, and my one son, we also know what people need in certain times. We're able to like we know what they need. We know what they're feeling. So we know how to help them, which is why we go into jobs of service too. And we're so good at them, but they also deeply hit us. So we are more affected, where you may have somebody in a situation where, and I was saying to my brother, like, my brother wasn't as affected as I am. My nephew's not as affected as my niece. My one son's not affected as my other son by stimuli and things in their surrounding and things that have happened in their lives. And so it's different, the difference between the really highly sensitive with the higher empath part in them as well, that really feels things deeply and also knows what other people need. So when I was looking at this with first responders as well, a lot is the ones that feel every call, the ones that are like really hit, and they're looking at their colleagues and going, okay, why aren't you as affected by this?
Yes.
Right? Because they're more highly sensitive and more empathic.
They are. And, empathy is something that all highly sensitive people are really good at. But exactly. And can really feel what it's going to be like for somebody else who's experiencing something, put yourself in their shoes. It's something that comes really quite easily. There are also some of us who are way up the sensitivity scale, who literally feel everything that from the people that they are with. And sometimes it's hard to, work out, is this what I'm feeling, or is it what they're feeling? And also it can be what society, the collective, is feeling. So people, some people just feel it all.
Yeah.
And I think in the past that has really been seen as something to be, I don't know, ashamed of, as though it's something bad, as though it's something you wouldn't want. Well, my view on it, and of course it would be because I'm a highly sensitive person, is that is something really valuable. Yes, first responders, yes, there are the challenges around managing our energy and making sure that we are looking after ourselves and our nervous system is regulated, which is very hard if you're in that sort of first responder situation. But if things can be put in place to help us manage that, then if you send a highly sensitive person into that situation, the chances are they are going to be picking up on things that a non-sensitive person is not going to be picking up on. Subtle clues that are going to help them understand that actually this is not what this patient needs, they need this, or they're not responding to that, let's try this. They will be picking up on things. So anybody who's listening to that who thinks, oh yeah, I think I do pick up on things sometimes, then I would suggest you explore that a bit more, because it really is something very valuable. It's just at the moment society's not really caught on to it, so that we're not valuing it enough. But I want to tell you, it's very valuable. It's a strength.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, so for you and I, you became a coach. I've been coaching for 30 years. And it's like, throughout my time, people are like, you're the one that's always got it. You've always understood. You've been able to fit the pieces together. And it's like, I actually didn't realize my value and worth as well in being able to do that. And I didn't realize that is because I am so highly sensitive and in tuned, and I can really feel people's feelings and all that through it. That, yeah, I can, which I'm assuming you can as well with your clients, is you sit there and you're like, I can piece it together. Like, I can sit there, and I do it 2 hours with somebody at first and really go through all of the stressors that they have had and all of the symptoms. And we start linking them, and I start asking them questions, and they're like, no one's ever asked me that, or that makes sense when you're fitting this in. And the thing is that they're all different. It's not like it's a cookie cutter thing with people, but it is that empath piece that is like, we can figure out people's stressors. And as you say, like, there is the nervous system stressor. And I talk about all these stressors all the time, where we have like our gut and our nervous system and our hormones, and we have the nutritional and the physical, but we also have this sensitive side, if we are highly sensitive, that we need to start looking into, which means I need to start looking into some more like with toxins, with the fragrances and stuff, or with the nervous system in a different way with you. And we start looking into the mindset piece as well. Okay, how do you separate somebody else's emotions from yours? If you are in that as a child and you're always feeling the anger or the frustration of your parents or the desperation in your parents, then you start feeling that and think that it's yours. And when you are in a job of service, even like ours, working with clients, it does, where I have to go in and go, okay, this is where I'm feeling and where I'm at. And if I start taking on those other feelings from somebody, I have to realize, oh, those aren't mine, that's theirs. And then I can dive into it with them because I know that it's theirs. But until you learn that, you take it on, and that adds to taking more energy away from you. And just it can put you in such a burnout because you're taking on everybody else's feelings and emotions and thoughts around you.
You're absolutely right. And that's the other side of it, isn't it? But also what you're doing is so valuable. In a way, you can probably work through with somebody in a 2-hour session that it might take 3 or 4 sessions with somebody else. And which means really sometimes we have to limit the number of people we can work with, because it does take so much, and we have to have those breaks in between. We have to be able to get out into nature. But you touched on another strength there, which is like big picture thinking. We can definitely see the whole picture and put things together and work things out and make connections that might not necessarily be obvious to somebody else. And you say it and the client goes, oh yeah, of course, I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah, a very simple example is my kids is just, they walk down the stairs and they'll see that we've moved something or we added something in, or like, I never wear makeup, but like one day I think I had mascara on, like, which is nothing. And my one son's like, oh, you did your eyes, mommy, right? Like from across the room. I'm like, how did you even notice this? Yeah. Or like, I guess I'd been wearing my hair down and then all of a sudden I changed the level my ponytail was at, like small things. And they're like, oh, you changed where your ponytail is, mommy. That's nice, which I just probably was in a rush and it just was in a weird spot. Yeah. But they notice everything. Yep. They notice everything.
And that's really valuable. Yeah, it's really valuable to be able to notice those little changes, those little things. And that's the skill that helps us be able to put people at ease. In a room, we can see who is okay and who's not so okay. And we can sense, because our intuition is so strong, we can sense that, maybe we need to open the window. It's a bit warm in here, or maybe somebody's a bit cold and we need to put the blind down because the sun is really affecting that person. But we can just pick up on those, and it's very subtle little changes in people's faces, or the way that they are just holding themselves or behaving. Or we can be the one who's sitting in a meeting where everyone's just talking, but we notice the person who's not engaged and isn't either their normal self or is and then we're really great at connection. So we can go, because we have our empathy and we've noticed things, we're like, we can go and see them afterwards and say, is everything I just noticed perhaps you weren't quite yourself, or you weren't engaged. Is everything all right? Do you need to talk? Do you need any help? Can I support you in any way? And that's why HSPs make fantastic leaders.
Yeah. And this is the thing too, where we're sitting here and it's like, I'm thinking in a corporate setting is like, sometimes you're there and you're like, is nobody noticing that this person has been struggling for a while? Or you're talking to somebody and they're like, and you're like, oh, so-and-so's really, I've been noticing. They're like, really? Like, and in my mind, sometimes I used to think, wow, you don't see this? You don't notice this in some person? But now I'm like, oh, you're not an HSP. You're not highly sensitive.
Yeah. So when I think back to some of the meetings I've sat in before in my corporate career, before I knew any of this, I'd be picking up on things and I'd be like, oh, well, nobody else is saying anything. So the people pleaser in me would go, oh, right, I'll not say anything either, because nobody else is saying anything. Or nobody's saying anything. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe that's not something that I should bring up. So because I didn't feel like I had a voice, I wouldn't say it. So really the key to being able to understand the strength in all this is really understanding that high sensitivity is a thing.
It is.
It really is a thing, and believe that, and then we can start to own the gifts that come with it.
So this actually, I got chills as you were saying something, and this vision came in my mind of my son at one point. So my son has, well, he's blocked it out, but he has synesthesia, which I had no idea what this was. I actually just posted on Facebook once that, hey, my son says he can see numbers in color. And
I can see words. I see
right.
words.
So he sees numbers, words, and emotions in color, which now explains too why he was so overwhelmed going into a room, because everybody's bodies had colors, which to me was this, like, as you said, it's this woohoo foreign thing. I'm like, what the heck? But I started reading into it, and I'm like, I started asking him questions. So this was after I'd found out about it. And then I was like, hey, we were in Florida like 6 months ago. And I'm like, there was a car accident. We were driving down the highway. It was dark on a Florida road, Florida highway. And the car beside us, we were in the middle lane. The car beside us was ahead of us. And then it swerved into our lane, swerved out into like to the shoulder, back into our lane, back into the shoulder, and then into a concrete barrier on the right side. And so I got on with 911. I have no idea where we were and all this. And like, we're in a dark road in Florida on the highway. My husband was driving. And so I asked him, I'm like, did you see my colors, my emotions that day? He goes, yeah. And I don't know what colors he said, but he's like, you were this color because you were actually excited to be helping someone. You were this color because you were feeling embarrassed because you didn't know where you were. You were this color because, and he listed like 5 different emotions that I had and all these colors I had and why. And I was like, oh shit, no wonder this kid gets overwhelmed.
Absolutely.
And the thing is he's blocked it. He's blocked it because it was so friggin' overwhelming for him.
Yes.
To see that. And that's where too, I'm like, oh, as a baby, like everybody was in his face. Everybody wanted to be, and I always was protecting him, but I didn't know why. He was just, I'd see that that's the empath in me. I would see.
And that's the intuition in you as well, knowing
right.
that you don't know what it is, but you know he needs you to protect him until
like, he's in distress. He needs space. But now I'm seeing him like, holy, he saw all these colors in people, probably all these excited colors to see this new baby that they just wanted to put all their, feels and love into, and it was probably overwhelmed. So all of this stuff as well, it is woohoo. Honestly, it seems woohoo, like colors, what the heck? Like, this is weird. But when I started diving into this with him, I'm like, he is so spot on. And he was like 5 years old then, 5 or 6, right? And it's just fascinating that we can be these people that we get into these jobs of service of helping people and doing these things, but until we really understand this piece as well, like there's so many pieces of burnout, but this is one piece that most people who go into a job of service do not realize can lead to their burnout, because they are not separating other people's emotions. They're not realizing how heightened their emotions are, and they don't have the skills or the understanding or the tools to help them to decrease the sensories around them at times, and to strengthen their nervous system to be able to support themselves through that so many of them just get overwhelmed. And I see this in first responders, like this is the piece I see in them a lot. And it's like, until we start diving into that, the other tools, the other stressors don't help them as much, until this is the piece with some of them that we start working on.
Yeah. And I see that. And in now I know what I know, looking back, I came from a childhood of experiencing trauma, experiencing really deeply. My nervous system was shot to pieces by the time I left home. I then went to university and somehow got through that. Didn't find it that easy because I hadn't learned the tools that I needed to learn to make great connections with people. But anyway, got through that. And then I went to work as a lawyer in a high stress environment, I worked in a big corporate law firm in London for a while. And then I moved around the UK and worked in other big corporate companies. And I just thought I was broken and I couldn't do it. Or there was something wrong with I kept changing jobs and changing cities, thinking I'll find the right thing. But actually what I needed to find was what was inside me and understand what was going on inside me. Because lawyers, actually, HSPs make really good lawyers, because we're good at the detail, we're good at the big picture thinking. So all of those, that made me a really good lawyer. But also the other side of it made me a very burnt out lawyer, and then on the edge of a trauma response the entire time.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things I learned during therapy, and is so important still to me now, is to really get my nervous system in a regulated state and really learn those tools that when I am dysregulated, how can I bring myself back? And that has been the best thing I've ever done for myself. I'm like a different woman now.
Yeah, myself as well. And I've been
Yeah.
coaching for 30 years, and I still have connections with people that I used to like right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's only the last, I'm going to say 2 to 3 years that I realized I'm a really good coach.
Yeah.
You
Yes, you
know,
are. Yes.
it's so funny because I had to work through all of that as well. Like, it's fascinating. And I'm 49 years old, and I realized that too. Like, just it's only come in the last little while that I've started realizing how good of a coach I am because of all these skills.
Yes.
So that has transitioned you into what you're doing now with your clients. Do you use those tools and bring in those things with your clients that you do? That you work
Oh
with?
God, I bring in all sorts. You know,
Yes.
I use all sorts of modalities. I'm constantly learning and looking for new things that are going to help, because I'm you know, everyone's different, aren't they? And everyone needs help in a different way. And everyone, you know, we always need to find a way. Where is the way in to start the work, isn't it? And so, yes, you know, it can be starting with nervous system regulation. It can be just talking. It can be, gosh, it can be, are you I mean, I do seem to attract a lot of HSPs. So it can be understanding about HSPs. Sometimes that comes at the beginning. Sometimes we have to do some work to then look at HSP like further on. It just depends on where they're at. But I very much use all my life experience and my highly sensitive skills to help them. I mean, you know, one of the main things is when clients come to me, and I'm sure it is to you, they need to know that what they're experiencing is not that there's something wrong with them. They don't need fixing.
Yes.
It's not that they're broken. They don't need fixing. None of us need fixing. What we do need to do, I think, because we're not brought up in a society to understand our own uniqueness and understand how wonderful we are just as we are.
Yes, yes. And once we start realizing all the gifts and tools that we were given, that we have actually thought were pieces that were broken or wrong with us, oh man, the things that we can do is
exactly.
And watching that in your client, that's the best in my clients. I'm imagining with you too. Like, that's why I do what I do.
Absolutely, me too. And I think so. I did a coaching program as well for highly sensitive coaches, which really helped me hone in on what is my particular gift, and what I seem to have this knack of doing is understanding where people's conditioning is really getting in their way of, and maybe this sounds really obvious because it feels really obvious to me, but you know, they'll come with something, tell me a story or something that they want to work on, and I will almost instantly be able to get to what it is in their conditioning, what has happened in their childhood, what has happened to them over the past that makes them feel like that, and then we can start unlocking whatever it is, and that it just comes really easily to me. Yeah. And we all have that, all those highly sensitive people, and also our journey in life is really has been leading us to where we are supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. And I think the hardest part, which I'm sure you probably find this as well, is when they're not your client, when you're actually just out and I'm like speaking to somebody and I'm like, oh, you're in deep burnout.
Yeah, I know. And you just have to not say anything.
But I usually start with 1 or 2 questions to see like if they even want to dive into it.
Yeah.
And the majority don't, if they're not ready. That's okay. Yeah. But like there's times where I just keep thinking about it at home and I'm like, oh man, you know, and that's part of like where we just want to help so many people. But it's we see so much then that once we get into our specialty, which for me is burnout, your specialty at this moment is with your clients.
Well, it's interesting. I haven't quite put that into words yet. I'm still, I don't know about you, but it's taken me a while to get the words, but you know, I don't know. unpicking childhood, unpicking conditioning and something which is not a phrase, so I can't say that, but
Yeah. So
something like that. The people who it resonates with know they want to work with me, and that's all I can say. It's something in my story, being a child of an alcoholic, highly sensitive, a lot of childhood trauma, or it's holding them back. Something is holding them back and they don't know what it is.
And you're really good at diving into figuring out what is holding them back and getting them to that next step. Amazing. Yeah. And I think with burnout too, there's times where I'm like, should I really be saying this is burnout? Because this is way more like when we're diving into it, like we're diving into the mental side, the physical side, but I guess I'm bringing into like 30 years of personal training, nutrition coaching, therapy, like all of the body stuff as well, and the gut and the hormones. So I'm like, yeah, I've really struggled to say exactly what it is that I do as well. So I completely feel you on that. All right. So Philippa, this has been absolutely amazing. Before we leave, there's so many golden nuggets in here. I just love, and this is a topic that I have not spoke about deeply. So thank you for making this such a great safe space and such a great conversation. I think this is what so many people need to hear, because those that are struggling often are highly sensitive and empathic. So diving into that side. Before we go, I do have all of your social media links and stuff. I'm going to put them in the show notes for people that are listening and just want to go to them right now. Where should they go to? And then I have one more question for you.
Okay. So my website is safeandsupported.co.uk. So you can find out about my book, my podcasts, about my coaching, everything on there, read a bit more about my story. So that's probably the best place to go. You will find me on Instagram as Safe and Supported Coaching, and you will find me on LinkedIn as Philippa Robinson. But my website's probably the best place to start.
Yeah, that's amazing. Go to that one spot and everything is in there for you to go.
Yep.
And if you want, for ease as well, go down into the show notes and just go click, click, click on all of the social media, and then website.
And come and say hi, send me a message and say hi, and you heard me here on Andy's Great Podcast. That would be lovely to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And your podcast as well, with podcast.
Oh, of course. HSP Connection is my new podcast with my friend Robbie. So and we're talking all about, yes, the challenges of being highly sensitive, but who doesn't have challenges? But also we really want to not reframe it. We want people to know the positives about being highly sensitive. It's
a gift. It really is a gift.
Absolutely is
that gift. So if you want to learn more about HSP as well, then go to Philippa's podcast. Make sure that you like it and subscribe. Same with mine, like it and subscribe, because that is how other people then hear about us. Exactly. If you could go onto Apple or Spotify, even if that's not where you listen, just kind of sneak in there and do some sort of review on either of them. That will help both of us with our podcast. So you now know how to find us. If you can, Philippa, if there is one thing that you feel that we missed telling people today, or one thing you feel that they need to know, what is it?
Can I have two?
Yes, absolutely.
So in line with what we've talked about, I would say, please do understand that high sensitivity is a thing.
Yes.
It's not just something namby-pamby to sort of brush under the carpet. It is absolutely a thing. So whether it's you, some of your family, a colleague, somebody who is talking about it, please do not dismiss it. It is absolutely a thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And the other thing is what I usually say, but we haven't really talked about it here, but what I usually like to leave people with, it is never too late, and you're never too old to start learning about yourself, who you are, and about some of the things we've been talking about here. I mean, I did nothing. I did not know that my past was with me for so long, and that what I didn't know is that I could heal from it. And I was 47 before I started any of that. So please do know it's never too late.
I'm 49 and I started therapy at 48. Yeah. So you beat me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. 47, 48 seems to be a real time. Hitting perimenopause big time seems to be a real time for women, I think. So, because I've had a lot of clients who've come to me at that age.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
And just coming more into myself, that I'm like, oh, man, I wish I did this sooner, which is why I've already got my kids set up with a therapist, so that when I screw up, they have somebody to help and lean on, so they don't have to wait until they get to where I am.
Well, what an amazing mum you are, too.
Thank you.
And what a great podcast, and what a great chat this has been. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been amazing. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Burnout Expert podcast. Absolutely go into the show notes. You can find all of Philippa's links in the show note. You can find my links to get on my email list to find out about all of the podcast links. Go in there and definitely poke around, sign up for what you would like to sign up for. We would love to see you. And please leave us both either a review on our podcast, like, subscribe, because that is how more people can find this podcast and find Philippa's podcast. And we will see you in the next episode.